What's up, friends? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. I realize it is Tuesday and the Packers-Titans game was last Thursday. Feels like forever ago. And breaking down the film of a game that I'm sure nobody wants to revisit, I'm sure is not going to exactly do epic numbers today, but I always love going through the film. Unfortunately, I was sick last week, and then I obviously had the opportunity to talk to Perry and Alex yesterday, so wanted to do that. So here we are on Tuesday, and it's still going to be Packers-Titans film review, usually what we do on Tuesdays, but usually directly off of a game on Sunday, not the previous Thursday. But I digress. I want to go over the film nonetheless, and yeah, it's as bad as it felt, probably worse even watching the film than it felt in the moment because, there's certain plays in the game that you're watching and you're like, all right, you can tip the cap to Ryan Tannehill for a throw here and there. And, some of the stuff was frustrating in the moment, but usually you watch the film and you're like, all right, it wasn't as bad. No, this is like some of the same stuff that we've been seeing all year long from this team. Offense, defense, special teams, miscues, errors, miscommunications, mental errors. Like, it's all over the place on all of the film in every single phase of this team. And it's week 11. Like, it's one thing in week 1 where you've got a secondary that misses a couple, has a couple miscommunications and allows Justin Jefferson to run free. Are you happy with it? No. Are you frustrated with it? Yes. Can it happen from time to time? Sure, especially in week 1. Maybe they gave you something that you weren't expecting, whatever. Like, that stuff clearly is going to get ironed out through the course of the season. It's week 11, and not only is it happening, it's happening at a higher rate than it was earlier in the season. And this was, I talked about the other day, how there's plenty of blame to go around right now for this team. But this is such a great example of execution, of coaching, and of scheme, all failing on the defensive side of the ball. We can talk about execution. Matt LaFleur adamant in his I think it was actually the day after press conference, of saying what's most frustrating is when it's communicated correctly to the players and they're still not executing on it. That's the players. That's execution. Assuming Matt LaFleur is being honest, which there's no reason for him not to be at that point. If everything's getting communicated to the players and they're simply not executing on it, then that's on the players. And I do believe that there is a decent amount of this that's just purely on the players. And when you see players running free on multiple occasions throughout the course of the game, and you go back and watch it on tape, I've mentioned this in the past, but it's one of the hardest things to identify is who's wrong on a play. And at some point, it just becomes the secondary is wrong for not communicating with each other and making sure that everything's passed off the way that it's supposed to be. But when certain players are in the vicinity over and over and over, and specifically Darnell Savage, more often than not, is involved in these plays where there's breakdowns. Listen, Savage might be right every single time. He might be the one that's right, and everyone else might be the ones that are wrong. It's tough to say when you don't know the rules and assignments and what's being communicated pre and post snap. But when the same player's involved over and over and over, you usually start to be like, okay, where there's smoke, there's fire here. And with Darnell Savage, it seems that this is a player that is guilty of some of these miscommunications more often than not. I can't prove that. I can't say that for 100% fact, but he's involved in a lot of those plays where there's breakdowns. But either way, regardless of who's to blame, there's players that are not executing the way that it's supposed to be executed. You also have coaches. Listen, this is not a group of 7th round picks and undrafted free agents. This is veteran Adrian Amos. This is veteran Rudy Ford. This is veteran Darnell Savage, 1st round pick Darnell Savage. This is 1st round pick Eric Stokes before he goes out with injury. I'm not talking specifically just about this week, but 1st round pick Eric Stokes. This is veteran Rasul Douglas. This is veteran 1st round pick Jair Alexander. This is veteran Keyshawn Nixon, 4th year in the league at this point. This is not a bunch of rookie undrafted guys flying around the secondary playing by the seat of their pants. This is a extremely well-paid, well-drafted group of defensive backs, veterans in this league, many of which, Jair, Savage, Amos, have been playing together for years now. All of them, save for Ford and Nixon, have been at least together for, this is at least their 2nd year together if you're including Stokes in that group. There's zero reason for miscommunication at all between this group, much less in week 11 of the season. That's on coaching too. And that's on Jerry Gray and the defensive backs coaches. Like, you've got to get this group to be able to communicate with each other to the point where you can have simple plays that are called by the offense and not have players run completely free. And listen, it is one thing if a Justin Jefferson or a Devontae Adams, if one of those guys is, makes a play, and because of their pure, unadulterated, ridiculous talent, they beat you, so be it. That's going to happen. The other side gets paid too. I understand that. Treylon Burks on the last real play of the game before the 3 kneel downs by the Titans. Treylon Burks beat Jaire Alexander one-on-one on that play. So be it. That happens every once in a while. Would I like to see Jaire Alexander make a better play on that? Yes. Do I think he was expecting it in that moment? Probably not. But if that happens, if their receiver makes a play down the field, Ryan Tannehill throws a perfect pass, and you get beat, so be it. You get beat. That's going to happen sometimes in the NFL. You cannot give free passes to the 31st ranked passing offense in the NFL with Ryan Tannehill and a bunch of receivers who are not threatening anyone throughout the course of this season, and just give them open passes all day long because you simply can't communicate effectively on the defensive side of the ball. That's execution, but that's also coaching, and that cannot happen. And then there is the scheme. You start the season with players out of place. Rasul Douglas in the slot, Jaire Alexander outside. And again, I defended some of that on early downs early in the season, and still think on early downs, I don't necessarily hate that. But on obvious passing downs, there was zero reason ever for Jaire Alexander not to be in the slot and Rasul Douglas to be on the outside. And it certainly seems now that Rasul was always meant to be a more of an outside defender. And if you needed to play somebody else in the slot because you didn't want to play Jaire there, then you need to play probably Savage in the slot with Ford at safety. You needed to do something different, all right? So, but they didn't have players in the right spots, number one. Number two, you weren't playing them the way that they needed to be played. You are paying a bunch of money for Rasul Douglas to be a press man-to-man corner. You drafted Eric Stokes to be a man-cover corner. Jaire Alexander, you paid the highest paid corner in football to be a man-cover corner. And you're playing them all off the ball as zone defenders. And you've got Darnell Savage, Jaire Alexander, and Eric Stokes, all three of which are not good tacklers overall in the secondary, not physical, intimidating players. And if you're going to play a bunch of off-zone coverage, you better make sure you've got hitters, tacklers, and just consistent players who are going to rally to the football in the secondary. That's not what Green Bay has. And it seemed like more recently, prior to the Titans game, Joe Barry had kind of figured this out. All right, we got to play more press man, and it shouldn't have taken as long as it did, but we started to see some success. And then against the Titans, it reverts back, and you're allowing one of the worst pass offenses in football to go right down the field on you. And there are multiple plays in this game where the Titans converted some of those 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7s, where I'm grading the tape, grading the game, and there's no player to give a negative grade to. They were just never put in a position in the first place to stop the play that was called. That is scheme, and that is coordinate. That's what the defensive coordinator play calling is supposed to do, is put his players in a position to succeed and stop the play. If every defender is 10 yards back and you're bringing pressure up the middle, but it's delayed and it's a 3rd and 4 and the receiver or tight end turns around at the 5-yard mark, there's nobody there, and Ryan Tannehill pitches and catches to that guy, that's not on the players. That's on the scheme. That's on the play call. There were so many times where Ryan Tannehill had to do a 3-step drop and throw to a guy that's wide open on 3rd down. Easy conversion. And I talked to Aaron Nagler about this. I get every once in a while you need to change things up. And maybe they ran the analytics and maybe there's something that said, hey, in these 3rd and 4 situations, the Titans love throwing deep. Like, they throw deep more than any team in the NFL. I don't know. I doubt that that's the case. But maybe some analytic or something that they saw on tape screamed to them, hey, we need to play more off coverage to make sure that we don't get burnt on this play. If on one of the first 3rd downs, you want to try something different and see if you can catch them, by all means, I get it. I understand. But by the 3rd or 4th or 5th time where this is happening and you're allowing easy completions on third down, at what point do you have to change your plan and say screw, even if it was the case that the analytics were telling you, like, say screw the analytics? And I very much doubt that that's even the case. I'm giving the best benefit of the doubt that I possibly can here. And even then, it doesn't add up. You can't do that. So when I say that there is plenty of blame to go around, the Packers secondary against the Titans is an A1 example of this. The scheme did not set the players up to succeed. The play calls were not the right play calls at the right time, at the right moment, for the right situation. That's on coaching. That's on scheme and play calling. The players were not executing, mostly because they weren't communicating, or in certain situations, they just weren't set up for success. And the coaches aren't getting the players ready to communicate in a way that you need to be successful. It's completely unacceptable all the way around. And again, this is why I say there's plenty of fingers to point, because if you're the players, you can say coaches and scheme suck. If you're the coaches, you can be like, well, I'm telling the guys what to do. They're not listening. And if you're, Joe Barry, you can say, hey, we called this play and the coaches don't have it set up so that the guys can communicate the way that they need. Like, you can point to everything, but everyone's wrong. And that's why you're allowing the 31st ranked pass offense in the league to put up, have a career day, not a career day, but like a very effective 300 plus yard, 3 touchdown day through the air with Ryan Tannehill throwing the ball. It's unacceptable. And this is just a microcosm of this team as a whole right now. Let's talk about some positives. My 3 highest graded players on offense in this game: Christian Watson, 0.75, David Bakhtiari, 0.7, Elton Jenkins, 0.6. And these are actually 3 really nice things to see and 3 really nice positives. Let's start with Christian Watson, who we saw the flashes, against the Cowboys, 3 touchdowns in a game. Was this going to be a flash in the pan, or was he going to be able to stack success? And the fact that Watson was able to stack success in this game, get another 2 touchdowns, and just show what he can do as a receiver for a second consecutive week is extremely promising. And a couple things that I want to note here. Number one, the best news is that Watson was open on numerous plays where he did not get thrown the ball. Maybe that doesn't sound like great news, understandably so. But what it tells me is that this wasn't just like, hey, he got a couple throws thrown his way at the right time, at the right moment, but he really wasn't getting open the remainder of the game. He was. And there's more opportunity there for Christian Watson. And that happened with Davante Adams too, as he was coming up, where, especially at the time where Jordy Nelson was there, Rodgers was looking Nelson as his primary read, understandably, because it's Jordy freaking Nelson. But you would watch the tape, and it was Davante Adams that was getting open on almost every single play, not Jordy Nelson. And as time went on, and eventually they obviously released Nelson, but as time went on, Rodgers started looking more Adams' way because he was winning more often. That will eventually start to happen with Christian Watson too. The more and more that he gets open on tape, the more and more that Aaron will start making him the primary read on plays, and the more opportunity will be there. So the fact that he's getting open, not just on the plays where he's succeeding, but on other plays as well, super promising. But the other thing, notice how in this game, and I know a couple of them were missed throws by Aaron Rodgers, but notice in this game, you had plays over the middle to Randall Cobb, a really nice completion to, actually I think it was Cobb over the middle. And then you had the play where Lazard was wide open that Rodgers overthrew him. You had the play where Sammy Watkins was wide open, but Rodgers missed him. Watkins didn't probably run through the play as much as he should have as well. But that middle of the field was opening up. That's not a mistake. That happens for a reason. And I'm not saying on every single one of those plays, but on numerous occasions in this game, Christian Watson's running deep. He's carrying his corner with him, and he's carrying a safety with him. And all of a sudden, 40, 50 yards downfield, you've got a corner and a safety with Christian Watson, which starts opening up the middle of the field more for guys like Cobb and Lazard and Tunyon and those sort of players, Sammy Watkins, who desperately need that middle of the field to be more open to have a better opportunity for success. And again, Green Bay didn't capitalize on some of those opportunities, but this skill set, this player, Christian Watson, is exactly what this offense needed. Somebody who can be a playmaker, somebody that can be a difference maker with the ball in their hands, somebody who has speed, somebody who can threaten over the top. And when you put 5 touchdowns on the board in 2 weeks, you're going to start getting the attention of the defense. And when you do that, you start opening up the middle of the field for everyone else, or even just the field for everyone else. So I do think that this is a player that is going to start to pay massive, massive dividends for this offense. And again, it was awesome to see him put together 2 weeks in a row. Now, it's still a bit of a roller coaster. He had the little, kind of run solution where he kind of fell down and like tried to make a catch and couldn't make it. He had another catch where he fell down and, couldn't really keep his feet, keep his footing and just kind of rolled out of bounds. He had a couple plays that didn't exactly look the way that they were supposed to. You had the play again for the second consecutive week where he's looking back for the ball, not really locating it. Kind of looks like he gives up on the play a little bit. Those are sort of things that he still needs to clean up. So it's still a bit of a roller coaster with a couple dips and twists that you weren't expecting along the way. But the insane acceleration and speed and exhilarating play from Christian Watson that you're getting on that roller coaster ride is well worth it right now. And like I said, he's exactly what the Packers needed on offense, is that sort of playmaking ability. So that was awesome. And then seeing Bakhtiari and Jenkins, Bakhtiari has been on this list since he's been back. He's played really good football. I wouldn't say like the best left tackle in the league sort of football like he was playing prior to the injury, but really, really good football still. So no surprise to see him on this list again. But to see him play, Sunday against the Cowboys and then come back on Thursday against the Titans and play in back-to-back games and have success and make it all the way through that game, thought that was a real positive in this game. And then Elton Jenkins, who has struggled. This was by far and away the best that he has looked in pass protection since coming back this season. And you can tell he's still not 100%. You can still, tell he's still trying to get his legs underneath him, but he moved better in this game. He anchored better in this game. And this was a real positive for Elton Jenkins. He, again, maybe not looking like he did quite prior to injury where he was playing really well, but really good game. And like I said, the best that he's looked since coming back from injury. So seeing those three players on the top of the list was certainly a real true positive, and hopefully something that Green Bay can build on. And those three can continue to play the way that they played these past couple weeks. The next is my three lowest graded players. John Runyon Jr., negative 1.05. Alan Lazard, negative 0.55. Up and down game from Alan in this one. And then Yosh Nijman, negative 0.50. Runyon and Nijman bring up a great conversation point, very similarly to Josh Myers. I posted a video of Ben Fennell posted the video. I retweeted it and said, this is an example of some of the inconsistencies that we're seeing with Josh Myers. And Ben responded back and said, we see a lot of that with some of the younger players right now, is we see just these inconsistencies. And he's 1,000,000% right. There are a lot of players on this Packers team where there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of really good stuff on tape, from John Runyon Jr. to Josh Myers, and I'll get into some of the other ones in just a moment. There's also games where you see a lot of really bad stuff on tape. 2 weeks ago against the Cowboys, John Runyon Jr., I think, was my highest grade. Maybe he wasn't my highest grade offensive player, but he was in that group. He had a fantastic game against the Cowboys. 4 days later against the Titans, he's my lowest graded offensive player. That's inconsistency. You don't know what you're going to get snap by snap, week by week. Yosh Nijman, 2 weeks ago against the Cowboys, one of my highest graded players in that game. This week, one of my lowest graded players. And you go through this team right now, and this is to what Ben was pointing out. A.J. Dillon, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Josiah DeGuara, Zach Tom, Josh Myers, John Runyon Jr., Yosh Nijman, Devontae Wyatt, T.J. Slayton, J.J. Enigbari, Quay Walker, Eric Stokes, when he was healthy. These are key players on this team, all of which are incredibly inconsistent to some extent. A lot of good on tape, a lot of bad on tape, and then a lot of just, normal football stuff. Like, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. It's not an A, it's not an F. It's just, you're playing football. Like, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, no big deal. But those inconsistencies add up. And this is an 11-man play working together as a team every single play. And there are so many plays on tape where 10 guys will do the right thing and one guy screws something up and it's a negative play. Josh Myers is a great example. You can have everything else, everyone running the right routes, everyone picking up their blocks and assignments, the quarterback looking in the right spots. If Josh Myers misses his assignment at center and a nose tackle or defensive tackle shoots up the field, it's play over. It's going to be a loss for Aaron Jones or Dillon, or it's going to be probably a sack on Rodgers or a forced incompletion. One player messing up on a play completely can blow everything up. Same thing on defense. Everyone else can be doing their job, but if one person misses an assignment, you've got a player running free down the field. And even if you get pressure on the play, Ryan Tannehill has an outlet where you can get the ball down the field and make an explosive play out of it. And that's what we're seeing from this team, is a lot of inconsistencies. And when you start adding up all of these players, Dillon, Watson, Dobbs, DeGuara, Tom, Myers, John Rennie Jr., Yash, Wyatt, Slayton, Enigbari, Walker, Stokes, all young, inexperienced players who are doing some really good stuff, but some really bad stuff. And every play, it's somebody different. A route ran to the wrong spot by one player, a missed assignment, a miscommunication, a blown assignment, whatever it may be. There's just one player, and it happens on so many plays that adds up through the course of a game. And getting all 11 to do the right thing on every play is becoming harder and harder because you have a lot of young, inconsistent players. And that, when I did my video a week ago, whatever it was, that draft and develop is dead, this is sort of what I'm saying. Draft and develop's great, and you get some good players out of it. There's no question. But if you're drafting and developing an entire team for 30 years, you never really have that moment where, and obviously they've had a couple of them, but the 1996 team was chock full of veterans that Ron Wolf signed that season. 2010 was a very draft and develop oriented team with a Charles Woodson and a Ryan Pickett and a couple others mixed in. That was a very draft and develop team overall, though. So it can definitely work. But when you've got a lot of young guys playing some inconsistent football all at the same time, it's really, really difficult to get over that hump and just to put together consistent football, at least consistent enough to actually go out and win a Super Bowl. I think we've seen that on numerous occasions. And I think this team is such a phenomenal example of, you just got a lot of young, inexperienced players playing for you at the same time. And it's tough to gain any measure of consistency when that's going on. All right, top 3 defensive players in this game. Rasul Douglas, gorgeous interception, had a pretty sound game overall, even despite the interception. Quay Walker, I thought he had a fantastic game in this game. Should have been, called on. There should have been a holding penalty called on his blitz up the middle that was missed and ended up in a big play for Derrick Henry. Just sideline to sideline, tackling machine. I thought this is one of the best games that he's looked all season long. So really nice game for Quay. And then Jerron Reed had a nice game as well, both in run defense and as a pass rusher. He was my 3rd highest graded player on defense. My bottom 3, incredibly frustrating. Jair Alexander, lowest graded player. Definitely a couple of plays where he was involved in miscommunications. A couple of plays where he allowed completions. A couple of plays where he looked awful in run defense. One play on the goal line where he very much made a business decision on Derrick Henry. And hey, listen, I'm not here to judge, but it was definitely a business decision. And maybe it was the right decision. But, those are tough plays to see. When guys are making decisions to maybe not get their hands dirty or potentially risk an injury. I get it, but again, those are always tough things to see on tape. So really tough game for Jair. Kenny Clark, first 7 weeks of the season, phenomenal. Plus 5 point something grade, looks awesome. Last 4 weeks, -2 something grade. Just a night and day difference from the first 7 weeks to the last 4 weeks. Maybe there's an injury. Certainly the injury to Gary and more eyes on Kenny Clark has played a part. He's seen more double teams. There's no question about it. But even when he's not seen double teams, even when Gary was in there, these last 4 weeks have not been the standard that we have seen and that Kenny Clark has set for himself. And that's been really disappointing. He had a couple nice plays in this game, no question about it, but just no consistency there whatsoever. And then Darnell Savage continues to have issues in coverage, continues to have issues tackling. He's not a starting caliber player, and it just is what it is. It's disappointing, it's frustrating, but he's not a starting caliber nickel or slot. He's not a starting caliber safety. It's unfortunate, and it just is what it is. And they picked up his 5th-year option. He's going to be on the team next year. and they're just gonna have to live with it. But it's a very disappointing season, back-to-back seasons really for Darnell Savage. That is going to do it for me today. I think I've gotten through this one without having to edit any coughs out so far. So I'm going to take that as a major win for this episode. But just to recap, Christian Watson, David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, my top 3 on offense. Rasul Douglas, Quay Walker, Jerron Reed, my top 3 on defense. Runyon, Lazard, and Nyman, my bottom 3 on offense. Jair, Kenny, and Savage, my bottom 3 on defense. Thanks so much for joining me. Always appreciate you. Make sure to tell a friend and subscribe if you have not already. That helps out a ton. I will be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.